Welcome to another edition of our monthly update of the things that are happening within the great state of Wyoming and the things that AARP is involved in. This month's episode is going to be focused on the legislative session. The legislature recently finished its budget session, and AARP was over at the temporary capitol, the Jonah building, every day working with our legislators to work on behalf of the 50 plus in the state of Wyoming on issues that matter to them. I'm going to talk about three different things that we worked on throughout this legislative session, give you an update on where we some of the successes and some of the areas where we didn't quite get across the finish line. So the first thing I want to talk about, every year we have a legislative reception, and this is an opportunity for us to have all 90 of our legislators. We invite them all to come to our office and some of the elected officials and share a meal with us. Typically we will bring in some Dickey's barbecue to feed our legislators. It's a great opportunity to sit down and talk about things that are going on. Well, this year, on the night that we were supposed to hold it, we learned early that morning that the legislature was going to be meeting until late that night, 8, 9, 10 o'clock that night. As an aside, just kudos to our legislators. They work really hard. They work long hours, and they are very committed to the work that they're doing. And so thank you, huge thank you to our legislators for the work that they do. So with our legislative reception, we had food coming in for 225 people. We decided, well, we don't want to just be stuck with all this food, so we mobilized quickly, got our volunteers. We partner with Y-Trans and the senior center directors on this reception. We got them all together. We hauled all of our food, everything over to the Capitol, to the Jonah building, got a room set up, talked to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate. They had all the legislators come down, and we shared a meal with them there at the Capitol. It was a great opportunity, to meet with them, where we almost missed out on that opportunity. We were able to act quickly, and it turned out great. So it's a wonderful opportunity. We were able to celebrate the birthday of Bill Landon, Senator Bill Landon, and we had a birthday cake, and so that was a great part of this legislative session that we'll remember. As far as the legislation that we worked on specifically, one of the areas was the budget, and this was a budget session, so the legislature was working to set out our 2-year budget. An area, our senior services funding, and this is funding that goes to our senior centers, 2 years ago was cut significantly. And the problem with those cuts is then our senior centers aren't able to provide the services that are so important to many in our state, that allow them to age at home, that provide the in-home and community-based services that are so important. Without that funding, too often, those folks end up in nursing homes, and we know that the nursing homes are a lot more expensive, and as far as quality of life, people typically want to age at home. So we worked with the governor, asked him to request to put some of those funds back in. He made that request. The legislature honored that request, and so $200,000 was put back into the senior services funding. We're very happy about that. We think that's going to go a long way, and our senior centers are very happy about that as well. The next area that we worked on, and I'll call this one a success too, was an area that AARP is particularly interested in is retirement security. And what that means essentially is that you retire and you have some money saved to support and have some quality of life and security in retirement. We learned, and we've learned from some studies and some research that's done on this, we learned that half of people who are retired have nothing, $0 saved for retirement. And the average retirement savings for people who are approaching retirement is like $2,500. That's a huge problem, because what happens, again, when people retire with nothing saved for retirement, too often they end up again in a nursing home, and nursing homes are paid for. 75% of nursing homes stays are paid for by the state of Wyoming through our Medicaid dollars. And so we're looking at this issue, and we said there's got to be something we can do. One of the reasons that people aren't saving for retirement is that half of Wyoming small businesses don't offer any kind of a retirement savings. And so we're looking at this issue, and we said, what can we do? How can we support people in saving for retirement? How can we support small businesses in offering retirement accounts to their employees? Started looking at some of the things other states have been doing, and there's some good work happening. So we said, let's see if we can get a task force put together in Wyoming to study this issue, to make some recommendations to the legislature to see if there are opportunities for education, if there's some way that the state can support people in retirement, saving for retirement. That task force was created by the legislature. It's going to be doing work over the next year. The task force is made up of a couple of legislators, representatives from the Treasurer's Office, from the retirement system. It's a broad group of stakeholders from business and finance that are going to take a look at this and see if there's some way that we can move the needle in supporting people as they save for retirement. That task force will report to the legislature December 1, and we'll see what they find. The University of Wyoming is also doing some research that we're going to try to leverage in looking at what we can do to address that retirement security issue that there is in Wyoming. The final piece, which was the one that didn't make it across the finish line, AARP was part of a task force created by the governor to study elder and vulnerable abuse and exploitation. And these are situations where someone, takes advantage of a person who may be vulnerable, and it ends up stealing money, for lack of a better word, stealing money from them or abusing them. One of the reasons that these things happen and that they go unreported is that the statutory definition of vulnerable adult, in order for law enforcement to intervene, in order for adult protective services to intervene to provide resources or protect that person has to meet the statutory definition of vulnerable adult. And Wyoming's current definition is really narrow, and it basically says that you have to be incompetent. What we know is that the typical victim of exploitation and abuse isn't incompetent. They can generally manage their affairs and their finances. They may have some mild cognitive or physical disability, but they're not incompetent. And so the task force recommended that we expand that language to reflect reality. And so we brought forward some language, presented to the legislature. It got a little bit muddied when it went through the process, through amendments, through the original drafting, and it kind of got to a place where it wasn't even better than it was when we started. And so eventually, while it passed out of the Senate, it died in the House. We're going to continue looking at this through the interim. We'll likely be working with the Judiciary Committee, the Joint Judiciary Committee, to look at this language to see if we can get it into place. We've got to do something with this because we've got to protect people who are in those situations where they're being abused or neglected or financially exploited. And so we're going to keep working on that. And so that's kind of a recap. There was a lot of other things that happened. It was a whirlwind session, very short session, and things moved very quickly. But I do want to give a shout out very quickly also to our advocacy volunteers. We have a team of volunteers. They work primarily here in Cheyenne, and they are over at the Jonah Building at the temporary Capitol working. We meet with them weekly. They are a really strong resource that we have in Wyoming as we do our advocacy work, as we try to be champions for the issues that matter to the 50 plus. And so with that is the legislative edition of What's Up Wyoming. Don't forget to share and like and subscribe so that you can get these updates and see what's going on with AARP Wyoming. Thanks, and until next time, we'll see you.